Okay, so the fourth film, that's a three, the fourth film in the Hotel Transylvania franchise, entitled Transformania, good title, just released on Friday of last week. I checked it out, and while I'm not overly attached to this franchise, I enjoy the better ones in them a good deal. They're okay. I'm not the target audience for this franchise, really, any of these movies, but I appreciate them, and there is actually some pretty good writing in some of them. So today, the film watcher who has not made a video in the past like 2 weeks, am going to rank all four Hotel Transylvania films from my least favorite to my favorite. By the way, I watched Peacemaker. It was freaking awesome. Could have done like a short review of the premiere or something. I'll do a series review when it ends. Maybe. Possibly. I don't know. There's not a lot of stuff coming out in January and February that I'm going to watch. Aside from like TV shows. Again, the trailer for Moon Knight tomorrow. I assume it'll hold the release date. If it doesn't, I'm going to be a little bit annoyed because I want a release date for it. Disney wouldn't want to put anything out that conflicts with Book of Boba Fett, which, again, by the way, great show. I love it. Anyway, let's do this. In last place is Hotel Transylvania Summer Vacation. The third film in the franchise, and in my opinion, the only one that is actively bad. I don't like it that much. I think I've only seen the whole thing one time. That one time was when it was in theaters. And then I think I saw like part of it after it came out, but I have had absolutely no interest in rewatching this movie, and I probably won't ever because I don't think it's that good. I mean, okay, so the idea of of Mavis trying to find her father Dracula, somebody to love, Queen, great band. That's a good enough idea, and I think it works pretty well. To some extent, like the relationship he has with this lady named Erica, played by Catherine Hahn, Agatha Harkness, by the way, is pretty good. But in order to get there, the franchise kind of has to break its own rules because in the previous two movies, they set up this thing called a zing, which is what happened when you fell in love with somebody, and it was like when your eyes got super big, and it's like this little flash thing that happened. It was a thing that was specifically for this franchise. It's hard to describe it because I am a live action person and am limited to the constraints of being a live action person. It would be cool if I was an animated person. I could get injured as much as I wanted to. Anyway, so, and this thing happened every time you fell in love. I think I already said that, but anyway. So, in the previous two films, they set up that you can only zing one time in your entire life. And Drac already did that with his wife, Mavis's mother, who dies before the events of the first film. So how does he zing a second time with Agatha Harkness, the ship captain? It's never really explained. And on top of that, like, okay, I'm not going to act like the first two films are comedic masterpieces, but they, and even the fourth film, have some solid laughs. This one, I did not find really anything that was funny about it. There's this running gag about this giant dog that just is dumb. The villain is Van Helsing. That seems like a good idea for a villain, except it's not. It's Van Helsing, except he's just a head trapped in a machine, which is weird. And there is a bit of an increase in like crude humor, like, fart jokes, poop that kind of thing that many Illumination animated movies have nowadays. But this one, the other movies had that, I think, to some degree. I didn't rewatch these movies before the fourth one came out, but I'm pretty sure they had some of that. This one has it like up to here, and it just gets bothersome. I I just don't think that stuff is that funny most of the time. Again, if it's done right, then it can be very funny. If it's done wrong, like in this movie, it can be not good. And it's not. So, you get a movie that's well-intentioned enough, but one that I just do not think is that good. So, yeah. The idea is pretty good. The animation is phenomenal. Better than that of the first two movies. And there's this Kraken, the song that's sung by the Kraken that's... It's a good song. I enjoy it. But the rest of the movie, I don't really. So, yeah. Number 3, Hotel Transylvania Transformania. The 4th film in the franchise, and the one that just came out. It was pretty alright. It was fine. I didn't really dislike it. So let's start with the good stuff. I think the concept is really, really cool, with the monsters turning into humans and humans turning into monsters, and they find a good reason to do that. The conflict in this movie is basically Dracula never really being able to accept that Johnny, a human, is in their family, and especially him, because he's a bit out there as a person, very energetic, and so yeah. And that makes sense. That's a reasonable conflict to have. And plus, the new designs for the characters when they turn into humans and or monsters are really, really good. Like, there is actually some pretty funny stuff in there. Like, I don't know, the Invisible Man having been naked for all 3 previous movies. That's just kind of funny. And then, there was actually some kind of, maybe a little bit of edgy humor thrown in there, maybe for the older crowd. Not that I'm old. I am kind of old. I feel old sometimes, but whatever. Yeah, and that I enjoyed. I don't remember a lot of it specifically, but whatever. That said, oh yeah, Brian Hull. Brian Hull. He is a YouTube, maybe, do you know, I don't know if you guys know who Brian Hull is. He is a YouTuber and now voice actor who he does impressions on his channel, and he is really, really insanely good at them. So, when I heard that he was going to be in this movie, I was like, what? Because, I mean, like, Adam Sandler and Kevin James, in fact, did not come back to do this movie, so they got Brian Hull to replace Adam Sandler. And he was really, really good. He didn't do he didn't do like a imitation of Sandler. It felt like he put his kind of own spin on it instead of just trying to copy exactly what Sandler did. And even the guy who came back to voice Frankenstein, Brad Abril, I hadn't heard of him before this, but he did a really good job as well. So, good job to those two. That said, the conflict is good. It feels like exactly the same conflict as the first movie, where Drac doesn't like Johnny, except now Johnny's been with him for a while, and I don't know. So it just feels a little bit tired and same-ish. I don't think that's a word, but I'm making it a word. Whatever. The climax is kind of goofy. And the resolution does feel a tiny bit forced at points. And overall, at this point, I feel like this was a movie that made me feel like, okay, I'm not the person that should be watching these movies. And admittedly, I don't really think there's much direction to take the franchise after this. Like, well, I don't really know what else there is to do. But, I mean, they could come up with something. It was good. I thought it was solid movie. I just didn't really love it all that much. Number 2, the original Hotel Transylvania. This is actually a very good movie. The wacky, zany, over the top humor with the movements of the characters just like being so cartoonish, it works pretty well. The animation is really good. I like the story. It has this solid message about prejudice, and it applies this very nicely to monsters versus humans, and there being a conflict between those two groups. And I really like all the characters. Drac specifically is a really good lead. All the like interpretations of classic, universal monsters, I guess. Frankenstein, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, the Werewolf, all of them. They're good. I kind of like that this movie is a little bit like Father of the Bride, except with monsters, because there's basically like almost entire lines of dialogue, or at least sentiments, that were plucked straight out of Father of the Bride. And I don't know. That's a good idea. I like that. I like Father of the Bride. I haven't watched the 50s movies. I did watch the 90s ones with Steve Martin, and those are great movies. And yeah, I like this one. It's good. The one problem I have, why is there a villain in this movie? The villain is Quasimodo, apparently, but is it Quasimodo? Because this Quasimodo is a 1 foot tall, somewhat bearded chef who hangs out with a rat. So basically, it's Skinner from Ratatouille if he and Remy decided to become unlikely friends or something. I don't know. I don't know why they needed to call him Quasimodo, and I also don't get why he's in the movie at all. Like, I guess he's kind of there to help enforce the prejudice message, but at the same time, the movie feels so... It just doesn't feel like he needs to be there. Like, the climax where Drac endures the heat of the sun that he physically cannot take in order to talk to Johnny about what he specifically did wrong throughout this movie, that seems like enough for a climax. Why did they need to add this tiny little chef guy in there? I don't get it. I like John Lovitz. He voices Quasimodo. He's not the problem. I just don't get why the character is even there, or why this is their version of Quasimodo. I just don't understand it. Like, Quasimodo isn't a monster. He's just a regular guy. I mean, the same could be said about Phantom of the Opera, but whatever, man. And he's not even hunchbacked. He bends over a little bit. What's up with that? Anyway. But number 1 is Hotel Transylvania 2. I really, really like this movie. It does and continues the first movie's, like, the story about prejudice, how it shows how Drac hasn't really moved past his issues all that much. Well, he has, but he's not really prejudiced towards humans anymore. He's just now very more biased towards monsters. So it's like he pressures his grandson to be a monster, and I'll tell you, there are some fun shenanigans with Drac trying to get this kid, Dennis, who's just so sweet, to be a monster that are actually, it's pretty funny. Like, he throws him off this rickety tower, and then he's like, it'll happen, and then he just saves him at the last second, and they end up burning down this entire summer camp. It's funny, and I think there's some fun stuff with Mavis and Johnny in the human world, as she's, like, discovering stuff, like slushies and bike ramps. I don't know, those, like, skateboard places where I don't know what they're called specifically, but whatever. And again, the movie is pretty funny. This probably is the funniest of the films. yet again, the shenanigans with Drac trying to get Dennis to be a vampire. And I can see how some might take issue with the fact that Dennis just becomes a vampire at the end of the movie. And I don't know, to me that always, it doesn't, it's not because of Drac trying to force it out of him that Dennis became, that, like, didn't become a vampire. He was a vampire all along. That he was a vampire. It was seeing one of his friends in danger. Like, if it was Drac doing something to try to force it out of him, that was the reason the vampireness was brought out of him, that I would have a problem with, but that doesn't happen. There is a really cool climax with this giant swarm of giant bats. This may sound a little bit weird because Batman is one of the best superheroes ever and one of my favorite superheroes ever, and I did an entire string of recasting videos and other such content about him. But bats really freak me out, man. Oh, I don't like him very much, but plus, you get some really, really fun new additions in this movie. Johnny's parents, voiced by Nick Offerman and Megan Mullally, who are a couple in real life, and are just so unbelievably funny together. And Nick Offerman especially, I just think he's a very, very funny guy. So yeah. And then, of course, you get Dracula's father, and this is where you start to see, oh, so that's why Dracula's so prejudiced toward humans. And this guy Vlad still is. This guy Vlad is also voiced by Mel freaking Brooks. I love Mel Brooks. Spaceballs is a very, very good movie. That's one of the only of his films that I've seen. I gotta watch more of those. But he is a really, really talented and hilarious guy. And he's so, so good in this role as this just ludicrous character who he looks more like a classic vampire than Dracula does because he's weird looking, he's creepy, he's actually menacing, and I don't know, I really, really enjoy him as a character. So, yeah. This is my favorite of these films, and that's about it. So, yeah. Thank you guys for watching, as usual, and keep calm and watch.